Okay.
Now, we're live. All
Mhm.
right. I have on the Judah Ross podcast today a guest who really needs no introduction. I would say anyone who is in the media, in um, in the Austin metro area, anyone who's a developer in real estate knows Justin Sayers with the Austin Business Journal. He is the one that's cracking all the stories, breaking the stories, cracking the cases. If you want to know what's happening, what's going to happen, highly recommend following Justin and subscribing to the Austin Business Journal. It's well worth it. But Justin, as I was saying in the beginning, thank you again for your friendship and for your time today coming on the podcast.
Yeah, so number one, you're majorly overselling me, but I appreciate that. I'm gonna have to hire you as my hype man or something.
Totally. That's like my side job. Um,
Yeah,
I
but I
love hyping
appreciate
people up,
yeah, but
especially
I
people
appreciate the
who deserve
plug.
it.
Yeah, I appreciate the plug, and yeah, Bastrop has definitely kept us very busy over the last several years. So, you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and like I said here, I like to I'll give you a big introduction, but I like to have just an informal conversation, just kind of shoot the breeze, chew the fat, as they say. I've got
Mhm.
lots of questions, but anything you want to go off and talk about more in
Okay.
depth, feel free to. Um, but I want to talk about something I know that's near and dear to your heart, and that's sports teams. So I saw you had some articles recently. I'm a huge advocate. I would love to see a Major League Baseball team here. I think it would just be
Mhm.
incredible, especially if they come out east. But tell me what you've dug up so far. Where are we at? What are the chances?
Yeah, so, as a personal note, I'm a huge baseball fan, huge Atlanta Braves fan, but just in general, this topic has been fascinating to follow because there were, rumors that we were hearing pretty much dating to when I started at the ABJ 4 years ago that, we had heard that executives from the commissioner's office were here at some point. We had heard, other rumors about high-level MLB people here in the push. So when we were able to break that story a couple years ago, like Paul Thompson, my former colleague, and I were kind of like, we called it our white whale story because it was like something that we had tried to report for 2 years.
Yeah.
Um, so that was fun. But in terms of reality, like, I don't want to be the wet blanket, but there are a lot of barriers to baseball
Okay.
coming here. Um, Reed Ryan is kind of the proponent of this, and like
What's
what
his role? I know I've heard the name.
so he's this the head of the entity that owns the Round Rock Express.
Okay.
So yeah, they do a little,
Oh, is that's
integrated
Nolan's
project.
son or
Yeah, and it's
okay,
Nolan's son. So,
gotcha.
they've been around here and they were the ones who originally brought baseball to the Austin area 25 years ago exactly.
Cool.
Um, and they Nolan actually lives in Williamson County. You can see it on our website, but Nolan actually helped with some economic development projects up in Williamson County too by just like taking pictures
Sure.
and sending it to some companies. But they if there is a push for MLB, they're going to be involved in it. But the Ryans are a little more realistic about all the barriers that have to be overcome first at the league level. So that's
Okay.
stuff like a collective bargaining agreement. That's stuff like hammering out what's going to happen with the Rays and the Athletics, which both don't have stadiums fully, entitled right now. There's a growing division between the players and the ownership right now, and that's going to have to be hammered out in the CBA.
This is
There's
league
issues
wide.
with yes,
Okay.
yeah, and this is like the players' union. Yeah, there's issues with the TV contract right now. Like, ESPN and MLB just severed their TV contracts. So there's
Oh
so many
wow.
things. There's so many things that have to be hammered out before expansion is even an option
Hmm.
that it's going to be a while. But the group led, that we've written about, Austin Baseball Commission, their point of view is they just want to be ready and prepared. So when that expansion process happens, they're not going to be, behind other cities that have been pushing for expansion for some of them for a decade. Like Nashville and Portland have been pushing for it for a decade. So, like it's going to be interesting to see what happens, but right now we're just kind of talking hypotheticals. But yeah, it is kind of crazy to see, real money moving on that end to
Yeah.
bring baseball here. Yeah.
No, it's super exciting. My boy just started playing t-ball this year. He
Yeah.
just 4, and I'm like I'll watch games with him. I'll watch like
Yeah.
replays and watch ESPN or something. And it would just I remember growing. I'm from New York. I grew up going to
Mhm.
Yankees games, and there's just the nostalgia of that. My first game I ever went to was 1996. It was David Cohn's perfect game,
Oh,
and
wow.
we
Yeah.
had like baseline seats. It was incredible. So.
Yeah.
Um,
That's awesome.
yeah, yeah. So like that leaves a memory in your mind as a kid, and I'd love to be able to do that again and to have something nearby. Uh,
Yeah, no, it's you asked on the end, like, possibility of Bastrop being the home of a team, and
yeah.
they did look at sites in Bastrop.
Oh, really?
They've been pretty, the Austin Baseball Commission has been pretty clear that they kind of want to be east of 35,
Cool.
but within Travis County. So it actually might end up being pretty proximate to Bastrop County. So
Yeah.
that's kind of interesting. Yeah, the other interesting one was we did hear and they did confirm they looked at Northline and Leander.
Okay.
It's one of the places they're looking, but the big issue is that the even though it's right on a Cap Metro line, the Cap Metro train cars are really small. So let's say you have 40,000 people at a baseball game,
Yeah,
like you're
those
not
things are
going to be able to
tiny.
move that many people on the line. So, like they liked that site, but that was a really big barrier
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Well, I'm a huge proponent of anything east. I think
Yeah,
East Austin
yeah, yeah,
is the future.
yeah.
So, this wouldn't be our first sports team. We have the FC, the soccer club here. How has that impacted Austin over the past few years that they've been here?
Yeah, I mean, I live right by the stadium,
Oh,
so
cool.
and then, you hear what people have said. Uh in from the general public standpoint, it feels like a lot of the, initial excitement and luster has kind of worn off a bit.
Okay.
I can hear that sentiment around, Austin, but from a business
Sure.
standpoint, it's still a massive success. It's a success story, across all sports.
Yeah.
Um, the big thing that they have done, like you always hear complaints about attendance and other things like that, but uh, Andy Lognane, who, we talked to for that story, said that they have these multi-year seat agreements and they have, a wait list still for seating. And from a business standpoint, that's what you really want.
Right.
Because it's guaranteed revenue. It's, not scrambling to sell out. They've still sold out every single game in their history. So
That
again, from a
that's hard
business
hard to argue
standpoint,
with success like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and from a corporate standpoint, they have corporate partnerships. They're announcing new ones. It feels like every week.
Yeah.
So, it's been a massive success on that end that I think a lot of other leagues and sports teams are looking at. That Austin is a viable market. I think it's hard to get like accurate numbers on private sports teams, but there are, entities like Forbes or Sportico that track that, and they put Austin at six in the MLS for revenue in the most recent numbers that they released. So again, from a business standpoint, like it's hard to argue with that for success.
Yeah. Now I know there was rumors, and I know the Journal. I don't know if it was you had reported on it,
Hmm.
like last year. Like the Spurs kept on coming up here and playing
Yeah.
games, and I was like, are they wanting to move to
Yeah,
Austin?
we
What was
we
that all about? Is there
never
anything?
Yeah, like we never reported on that because
Okay.
it's kind of a pipe dream. Like,
Okay.
the Spurs, we did report on this though.
Yeah.
Like the Spurs, so I'm learning this in this job
Yeah.
about like how sports teams operate and market and TV share and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, when it comes to like the NBA, you get more money based on your market size. So
Hmm.
the Spurs actually are in one of the smallest markets in the NBA. I think they rank,
Interesting.
this is off the top of my head, like 21st or 22nd in the
Okay.
NBA in terms of market size. So in
And
order
that's
for them,
just the San Antonio metro area.
yes,
Okay.
yeah. So in order for them to, like grow their market, it's either people move there
Hmm.
or they have to get creative. So they're trying to get creative here. and actually like bring in Austin as part of their market share, quote unquote. So they've actually set up an identical operation to what they have in San Antonio here. They have an
Okay.
office in Austin that, has marketing, has sales, has community outreach, has other stuff. It has a market head named Brandon James, who
Mhm.
we've profiled and written about a ton, and they have their G League team here. So basically, like that's
Right.
all done to basically turn Austin into Spurs fans. Does that
Cool.
mean, yeah, like does that mean that the Spurs are going to move up here?
Yeah.
Highly doubtful. And but there is one thing to watch. Like the Spurs right now are going for a new stadium down in San Antonio. It's
Hmm.
most likely going to pass, but if that doesn't pass, then
They
we can
can hold
start
that
talking
as
about
a
like,
leverage.
yeah, that's when we can start talking about Austin stealing them. But yeah, they
Gotcha.
also tried to do the same thing in Monterrey, Mexico.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah,
so
I heard
yeah,
about that.
so like they played a couple games in Mexico. So basically, like they said, we can expand our market from Monterey to the south to Austin to the north, and then we become a top 10 NBA market and we get more money. So like it's actually really fascinating what they're trying to do.
Yeah,
And so far it's working. Like they said that a lot of their corporate base is, like advertisers and stuff are actually coming from Austin. They've looked into doing like buses down to Spurs games from Austin. So
cool.
yeah, like they're trying to basically make Austin Spurs fans.
No, the business of sports is always fascinating, and to see it play out real time in our backyard
Yeah.
is really cool. You mentioned something I really want to touch on, and that's the luster of
Yeah.
Austin. Um, and we're in media, we're talking about media. Like you
Mhm.
can't ignore the fact that uh, to me, like I genuinely love Austin. I've been in
Mhm.
this area for 15 years. I'm very invested in it. But like, if you pay attention, you see so much of the hype
Mhm.
was I mean, there was a lot of organic stuff to it, but it was very purposeful. The city spent tons of money advertising, creating conventions, things like
Yeah.
that. Hyping up this is the best real estate market in the world. Realtors like myself are certainly part of that. Um,
Mhm.
and just selling it, and it was inevitable it was going to reach a point where it would lose some of that luster, and it's
Yeah.
everything's a cycle as is. But like there was a big, I see the media starting to catch on. In real estate in general, Redfin published I don't know if you saw that, 500,000 more sellers. So you know
Yeah.
someone in real estate, like I've seen for the past 2.5 years, it's a buyer's market. But you see the media start chiming in now, and then just Austin in general, I see like people are wanting to talk about it's overhyped, and people moving back to
Yeah.
California, and whatever it may be. I want to hear from someone who's in the trenches like yourself,
Yeah.
and really has their ear to the ground. What are your and your personal feelings as well,
Yeah.
just living here. Tell me your thoughts on all that.
Yeah, so I have to say off the top, I am a Californian,
Okay.
but
Are you
I've
moving
moved
back?
around. Yeah, I've lived in a lot of
Yeah.
different places. Like,
Yeah.
I've lived in Arizona and went to school there and, worked there for most of my adult life. I
Yeah.
worked in Kentucky for 3 years. I worked in Connecticut. So I've, been in a lot of places. The biggest difference between Austin and anywhere else I lived is that people in Austin do not like to talk about the bad things about Austin. Like it's very much like a mission of we got to talk up Boston, we got to talk up Boston. But
Yeah.
from my point of view, the last year or so, that narrative is changing a bit, and people are acknowledging that there are some issues here. Like it's not perfect. And you're starting to see that bleed out in headlines like the Wall Street Journal,
Right.
last week saying Austin's tech boom is done.
Yeah.
My reading on it as, like watching the news and everything, like there are some real issues that Austin has to work through right now.
Yeah.
Our infrastructure issues are a major problem. I-35, things like Project Connect and, getting the public transit done,
Yeah.
just road and, other infrastructure. Then you push out further, like you're on the east side, everybody really wants to develop on the east side, but there's some real, infrastructure and utility issues to serving that, as you probably know.
Water seems to be the big one, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like even getting power, like it's farmland,
Yeah.
getting power and water and bringing that, like it is difficult. It's not something you can do like Roller Coaster Tycoon where you can
Yeah.
just drop a,
Click, click, click. Yeah.
like yeah. So, like those conversations are really ramping up because we boom so fast and
Yeah.
now we're kind of like, oh no, we need to take a step back. Like, you've seen the headlines on our website, Austin's population is not growing as fast anymore.
Sure.
um, People are moving out to the suburbs, and these suburbs, like, I can give you an example of Hutto in particular. Like, they've become a lot more judicious about their development, and
Hmm.
they're experiencing some water issues. Some other cities like Kyle, they were working on expanding their capacity, Leander, Liberty Hills. So like these are real issues that have to be worked through before we continue to do it. And then the big thing at the end of the day is cost. Like,
Right.
Austin is pretty expensive, like not even just for housing, but for other factors too. And companies are not, picking Austin immediately like they did 5 years ago because they can find similar, options in places like San Antonio or even Dallas and Houston.
Hmm.
Um, the other big thing that's starting to creep up that we're hearing more is the workforce issue. If people can't afford to live here, companies don't have people to work here, like work for them. So
Yeah.
like workforce issues are gonna continue to be a barrier if people can't afford to live here. So I don't know. I don't All that's to say, like headlines like Wall Street Journal saying that the tech boom is over,
Yeah.
probably overselling it a bit. At
Sure.
the end of the day, like my colleague Brent, who does Austin and O, was like, we've had like $1 billion of startup funding already
Yeah.
this year. So like that's pretty good for tech. Cities,
Yeah.
around the country would love that. Any city would take $1 billion in funding for startups. So like there's still some really, really good signs, but there's some things that are gonna have to be hammered out over the next couple years.
Yeah.
And again, like as a journalist, I'm encouraged that people are actually talking about it now instead of just ignoring it, which is what
No.
they did for the first few years.
No, that's a really good point. And I'll say, look, I'm very personally involved and in the outcomes, but I
Yeah,
believe very strongly in the fundamentals of the Central Texas area. Even during the 2010s when I was living there and all the hype. I
yeah,
mean, there's what the media portrays, but you're living it. Working in the economy, working in real estate, you
yeah,
see. I really think, and this is very much like a realtor thing to say, but like the quality of people that seem to be attracted, we really seem to get some high caliber people that want to come
yeah,
out here, want to start businesses, want to move here. It just
yeah.
it draws people, um, and no, I think it's good. These are issues that need to be addressed. I look at it as like a child, like the
Yeah.
city's growing, it's growing
Yeah.
pains that it has to
It's
go
still,
through.
I love that. Yeah, I love that analogy because it really is still a young city. Like,
Yeah,
people want it to be
that's what
like that
people
as
forget.
soon as
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. But no, and the other interesting thing too is just that from I always say that Austin and Texas as a whole have really good marketing teams.
yeah,
Again, as somebody who's not from here, like people's perception of Texas and Austin is completely different than, people who live here. Like
right.
when I tell friends all the time, or like, I'm going to meet up from friends from out of state, like they're like, oh, Austin's so fun, whatever,
Yeah.
like, and I'm like, you think that I'm going out on 6th Street every day? Like, I have a job, I have to do that. But
Yeah.
um, just in general, like, I think people didn't really expect like I won't say that a lot of people are not moving out of Austin. Like, a lot of friends that I have left and,
Mhm.
a lot of people I know that are coming back to California, but I think it was because they came here with not a realistic view of what Austin was. Like,
What
I
was
read about
that? I mean, I have friends, I have many clients that
yeah,
moved, but what was that during COVID?
like
I know there was like some of it was political. I have
yeah,
conservative friends that were like, okay,
I
now it's time.
think I think Austin has this vibe about
Yeah,
it that's almost like Hollywood of the 1940s and
yeah,
50s, that it's like this is the place for, young people to go to and, like still be fun, which it has a lot of that, but at the
right.
same time, like there were a couple quotes in that Wall Street Journal story that resonated. It's like if you're coming from California, like despite, the headlines and what people in Texas tell you, quality of life in California is still very good.
Yeah.
If you live in Northern California, like you can go to the beach and go skiing in the same day. In
Yeah.
Southern California, where I'm from, like, you can go eat at any restaurant, any cuisine known to
Sure.
man, like in California or New York. You
Yeah.
can't do that yet in Austin. Like we're still, our food scene, as much as people want to hype it up, like it's still hard to find, you
Yeah.
know, good
The
good type
the
of cuisine.
Michelin, all the Michelin stars have,
Yeah, but
I
it's
think,
like
was
it's
pretty cool.
barbecue and tacos. Like if you
A
want
thousand
something
percent.
besides that, like,
Well,
it's
Bastrop is really really struggles. It's like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
Mexican food and diners,
yeah,
and they're good ones. But man, like sometimes we want a variety.
yeah. So like, compare
Yeah,
you even compare it to Houston, it's like you can
sure.
literally get any type of food that you want. Like, if
Yeah,
you're coming from California and that's what you're expecting, like it's difficult. And then again, costs, like, I can say this personally, like it's not as cheap as people think it was gonna be. Like
yeah.
it's a pretty expensive city to live in, like when I
Well, I
lived
mean,
in
I can
Tucson,
tell you, and
yeah,
I'd love to chat real estate a little bit, but like
yeah,
the inflation we saw in housing during COVID was just so friggin' I
yeah,
mean, I remember I had it was he's a property manager at an
yeah,
apartment where I lived in
yeah,
Austin, and he was telling me how he bought his house. I don't know, it was like 6 years ago. It was like off, bought it off market for like maybe around 200 or something, in like the southwest,
yeah,
portion of Austin. And then I remember he sold it, and I went on the MLS and I was looked it up, and he sold the thing for like $650,000, and that was like he timed it perfectly. And I mean, there were so many people like that, and I was kind of start building my business at that point, and like I had a little bit of those really good years, but to me, I was like. Um, I was like, this is ridiculous. The 2% interest rates was just so irresponsible.
yeah,
The hype everyone was kind of going after, the bidding wars people were getting into, and that agents were encouraging.
yeah,
I just thought was crazy, and we're seeing some of the aftermath of that now.
yeah,
And that was very, very much irrational. I'll give you my thoughts. I was, I'm 30, what am I, 38? I think 37. But, I kind of, graduated, kind of entered the workforce during, the 2008 recession, and that like left a big impact. And it's part of the reason why I held off purchasing real estate for a long time, because it kind of scares you. And I know that's always in the back of everyone's mind. The media has been predicting a crash for the past 10 years. I don't really see it happening. I see like a deflation, which I think is needed and fairly
yeah,
gradual. But I know you're always, you're on the ground, and seeing the developments all over Austin. Love to hear your perspective. Where do you think the real, I guess, how we got here, why it got so crazy, and where do you see the real estate market now and in the
yeah.
next few years?
I mean, that's a great question. I literally, like I feel like I ask people about this all the time and you get
Yeah,
like 15 different answers, but
sure.
I mean, I agree with you. Like the market was so inflated, our demand was so high with everybody moving here that it naturally had to go down.
Hmm.
But I'm not as optimistic that the prices are going to go down, to the point that it's still going to be accessible.
Yeah,
For like, I'll give you the example. Like, you look at population trends right now, like people are moving out to Lockhart and Caldwell County more than anywhere else. And
yeah,
it's because the housing's cheap there.
yeah,
Like I think Wilco is going to struggle a little bit because a cheap house in Wilco now is 400, $500,000. Like
yeah.
that's not cheap.
No, it's not at
Like,
all. Yeah,
if you're a working class couple with kids,
yeah,
like, you're not going to be able to afford a house on a combined $125,000 salary,
yeah.
Yeah, so like these are real barriers that I think are going to become part of the conversation, that it's either going to be people moving to areas of the metro that they never thought they would live in, like Lockhart, or we wrote about Mustang Ridge last week, and
I was
there's
going
a
to
lot
bring
of
that up. Yeah,
housing,
it's
there's a
exciting.
lot of housing developments that it could go there in Creedmoor and like in Bastrop,
Yeah,
like people may end up living there, but like, it's gonna be fascinating to see because like, that is a stretching of the metro. Like people might not want
sure.
to live in Bastrop because if they work downtown Austin, like, so then people are going to continue renting, and our renting market is actually stabilized a bit. So
That's
I
it, because I
really
know rents were dropping as
rents,
like was
yeah, a
leaving.
lot of the multifamily that was starting to be built
Yeah,
in 2020 came online. So we've actually we're a national success of multifamily,
yeah,
like quote unquote from what the market says, just because we finally filled our supply and rents did start dropping.
yeah,
But it's again, you compare it to Houston or Dallas and it's still expensive. I think our rents are still on average the highest out of any city in Texas. So,
okay,
again, these are long term gonna be really big barriers for companies that are looking here. Like they need, especially factories that have 1,000 people.
yeah,
If you're 1,000 people who are making $60,000 to $70,000 can't afford to live here, you're not going to put a factory here. You're going to go to a place like Tulsa, Oklahoma, or you're going to go to a place like Georgia.
right,
So yeah, affordability is, going to continue to be the biggest story and the biggest question mark
yeah.
moving forward.
No, that's why I'm so bullish on, again, everything East. I
Yeah,
look at it, I think you can look at just like the headlines and like census data, and you see for like starting in early 2000s, fastest growing suburbs and counties was like, Round Rock, Georgetown,
yeah,
Williamson County, Leander, Pflugerville, and then it started shifting, in the past 10 years to like Buda, Kyle,
yeah,
New Braunfels, Hayes County. And I think just geographically, even without all the other, pressures and businesses that have moved out here and attention that's come here, I just see like, yeah, there's just a lot of east. There's a lot of cheap, empty land.
yeah,
Uh, that sure there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but they're like D.R. Horton's building houses out here for like 250,
yeah,
selling new homes, buying down rates. And I know in Mustang Ridge and stuff like that, they've got even in the low 200s. So,
yeah,
uh, I'm a big proponent of home ownership. I'd love to be involved and make money
yeah,
off of it, but I just think it's great that I think, seeing attainable first time, or entry level homes again.
yeah. And
Uh,
that's, I mean, it's funny you said that because this is always the question to me as somebody who's 33 years old. They always say supply and demand, but I can tell you from my friends, the friends who bought homes 5 to 10 years ago are in great shape. Friends who are
sure.
trying to buy homes now are not in good shape.
Yeah.
It's really hard. And that's the question that I always ask. I wish there was a way, to see who's buying the homes because I think what would help us a lot,
Hmm.
you know, like I don't know how this would be done, but what would help us is if, cities would put requirements on home ownership and subdivisions to be 15% of this subdivision has to be first-time home buyers.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
like that would be a really good solution.
Yeah.
Because I know there's thoughts of investors are buying up the homes. I know there was a fear that foreign companies were buying up
Sure.
homes, and
I see
both of
less.
those
I see less of the
yeah,
investors doing that, whether
yeah,
it's like Zillow or BlackRock. There was a
yeah,
ton of that during COVID, um,
yeah.
and it was,
Redfin too,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
Redfin. They
yeah,
were all getting in it, but I mean, some of the Open Door, they
yeah,
ended up losing their
yeah,
shirt. Because
yeah.
that
But
that was the other thing I always talk about. I
yeah,
think that was a big part of the hype, is because all of a sudden you can go to
yeah,
Open Door and get, and they would just flip it and make 10, 20,000 on it. Um, there was a lot of just
yeah.
irrational exuberance
So
in
no,
the.
that's been the question for me. As a journalist, if I could do one story, it's breaking down who's actually buying the homes because I
Yeah,
think that would really tell us the that would help us shape, what we need to do on housing. Because, yeah, I think the big thing is the costs. If we're having people who are buying
yeah,
4 or 5 homes, and they're owning 4 or 5 homes and they're not renting them out or anything, or they are renting them out, that is a massive contributor to, inaffordability, in my
sure,
opinion.
sure.
Um, so yeah, that's the thing that I would love people
No,
to,
that'd be
yeah,
really really cool. I
yeah,
suppose, if you can pull, I suppose there'd be a way like pulling tax data so you get the like new owner
yeah.
information and kind of. I'm sure there's data brokers out there that have that.
Yeah,
No,
that would do that.
I'd be
Yeah.
fascinated as well. I'll tell you some super like small data points, but just
Yeah.
interesting trends I've seen. I've had in the past, I say half a year, I had four first time home buyers, and they all got huge, like very significant portions of like the purchase price paid for by their parents, which were like boomer generation
Yeah.
parents helping them buy homes. And like to me, it was like I'm seeing four. It was enough. Like, oh wow, that's a little bit of a trend. Um,
Yeah.
and then I'll tell you, I've had more than one seller who is selling and needs to move out of Austin. Well, mostly the Bastrop area, but they need to move out of Central Texas because it's just too hot. Like the summer's
Yeah.
killing. So yeah, I'd love to get an understanding on like a large scale of like who's actually buying, why they're buying, where they're at. Like you're saying, that would be incredible
Yeah.
project.
Yeah, because I think that's the big thing is that
Yeah,
we need to incentivize like a pathway for people to own homes. Like there are a lot of good ways that do that. I know like the VA does it and there are
yeah.
other, first time home buyers, home
I'll tell you,
loans and
I've
stuff
been
like that. Yeah.
hearing. I'm curious if but I've been hearing lots of rumors, and there's people in the industry always going to hype up things, but I
Yeah.
could see. Um, I can see the Trump administration either putting a ton of pressure on rates or, I was just listening to one podcast. They were talking about taking Fannie and Freddie out of
Yeah,
conservatorship,
conservatorship. Yeah.
which has kind of put like brakes on them, right? And like
Yeah.
excess regulations. So, kind of, and we might just end up in the same problem,
Yeah.
same position, but I feel that pressure building up, and
Yeah.
I think there's enough levers that like the government can pull to start making things affordable
Yeah.
again. Uh,
I think the interesting thing is that from our perspective here, watching stuff that comes through,
yeah,
uh, single family home building and has not slowed down at all.
yeah,
And actually, if anything, I would venture to say, like in terms of looking at entitlements and other stuff that's coming through city councils right now,
yeah,
it's probably ramped up.
yeah,
And you talk with experts, and they always say it's a supply and demand thing.
right,
Like, even the state of Texas has said, like the comptroller's office has put out studies that said, I can't remember the exact amount off the top of my head, but, that we're hundreds of thousands of homes deficient for where we need to be in terms of affordability.
yeah, yeah. I've heard that
But
consistently.
yeah, but the other interesting thing that's going to happen is like, you know, just building homes like, are we going to sprawl out? Like, is Austin just going to continue to sprawl out? That will lead to more issues again with the
Sure.
water, with the infrastructure. So I think like, we're again starting to have those conversations of density and sprawl and water and
In
that
the
kind of
in the
stuff.
city, in the core, I
Yeah.
mean, they seem to be doing a really good job, like downtown, right?
Yeah, I'm sitting downtown right now at our
Yeah,
office and like density wise, like yeah, it's I think we just wrote about another new tower that's coming last week at the
yeah,
site of the Vince Young State or the PF Chang's or the Vince
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
On
So
the east
yeah,
side
they're
there.
in
Yeah.
the density is big
I
down
saw.
here.
It's always
Yeah.
fun reading Do you ever read the comments like on your tweets or Facebook posts? Like just
I try to avoid them,
yeah,
but
that's the smartest way to do it. But
yeah.
for my own stuff, I usually ignore it. But I was reading
Yeah.
it, and someone was like, as they tend to do, they were lamenting the loss of like
Of a PF
historic,
Chang's.
and I was
Yeah.
like, it's BF Chang's, come on.
Yeah, I'm like, like I say this as someone who's a business reporter, like
Yeah,
I think that we did not have we did not have good conversations 5 to 10 years ago about
yeah,
protecting things. Like those conversations are getting a lot better now.
yeah.
But PF Chang's, I don't know if that's a historic
A
landmark.
tragic
No
loss
offense
to an
to,
Austin
no
landmark. Yeah,
offense, yeah, no offense, but yeah, I mean we've lost a lot of
yeah,
classic great places in Austin that, in other scenarios probably would have been saved, in other cities probably would have been saved.
yeah,
Or at least, given the opportunity to move in somewhere, or, like work out a deal where they could, come back and be incorporated. That's why
yeah,
I'm actually really fascinated by so our office is right on 6th Street, but I'm like watching the 6th Street redevelopment right now.
yeah. I was
And
gonna
so
ask that
far, like this has been really different than anything I've seen.
in a
'Cause,
positive way.
in a positive way. Like they
Cool.
dreams having
Yeah.
conversations with business owners. Like
Yeah.
the businesses on Sixth Street, a lot of them seem to be for this
Yeah.
because they've been, pretty disappointed with the city
Yeah.
and safety and other stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that might end up being like, an example of really good redevelopment.
Yeah.
It's still so early, but like, as, a resident, that's kind of what I'm watching.
That's really encouraging to hear.
Yeah.
The things I've read about it seem like they're going about it in a pretty intelligent and
Yeah.
thoughtful manner. I love seeing like quality development, quality
Yeah.
redevelopment, where like you do it right, you got the money, they know how to build, but like they're taking their time and trying to incorporate the community. It's needed. I mean,
Yeah. And
Sixth Street is
I
kind
say
of going.
that,
Yeah,
yeah, like I say this as, someone who covers the suburbs. My beat
yeah,
is, everything but Austin,
right.
pretty much. But,
Yeah.
um, I see this as somebody who works at like sometimes I do feel like the suburbs are way better at preserving and, preserving their culture and like, you know, they it's unfair because Austin is a bigger city and grew
Yeah.
faster and went first, but like you look at cities like Georgetown and Kyle and even Elgin and Bastrop and
Yeah.
Hutto, and like they're so intentional about their growth.
Yeah.
Like, every single one of those cities I named, adding in Liberty Hill, Leander, Cedar Park, like they've designated downtowns, they designated where the density is, and they've built out like they've cornered off what's going to be their unique thing, Lockhart. And like all these cities are basically building their own downtowns that are way more unique than an Austin downtown.
Yeah.
Austin's downtown is becoming a big city downtown, minus, areas like East Austin and Sixth Street, but and South Congress. But like, they like Georgetown has their square, Lockhart has their square, Hutto is building out their co-op district,
Yeah.
Leander is building out North Line, Liberty Hill, is bought some real estate down there that they're going to use to build out their main street. Cedar Park has a couple, areas. Round Rock has their main street that they've done a great job with, and they're apparently about to go a little more dense and,
That's
might go a
awesome.
little higher in some buildings. Kyle's building out their own downtown. San Marcos is redoing their downtown. So like they
Yeah.
basically were able to look at Austin and be like, we're going to do that differently, and we're
Yeah.
going to keep our cities that, like what makes us unique and then build around it and do that. And it's actually really cool to watch.
No, that is. And I love that you focus on the suburbs. I'm
Mhm.
in the suburbs. To me, that's where the growth is. We
Yeah.
even the headlines that talk about, rise, fall, whatever of Austin, they when you expand it out to the entire metro area,
Yeah.
these are still the fastest growing communities and they're accelerating like crazy. Um, and that was fun. I actually I wanted to do that. I wanted to go like
Yeah.
suburb by suburb and just get a quick hot take from you. So
Yeah.
it's awesome to hear they're all developing like this. I can tell you being involved here in the city of Bastrop, I see there's a lot of like, hey, like this is what San Marcos is doing. This is
Yeah.
what Kyle's doing. They could have done this better. We're really like learning. Yeah, I see the
Yeah.
smart people in government are trying to learn lessons from all the neighbors here, and and you get consultants in, there's plenty of them are a waste of money, but there's some really good ones, and they'll have like I remember when we were doing the impact fee here, we had a consultant that had worked with Round Rock and Georgetown, and they were able to provide some like really useful data on cities that have come before us in this process, and
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
kind of put us on the right footing.
Yeah.
Um,
I think on that note too, I remember talking with the Kyle mayor, because he's in his last term, so he's really
okay,
making like downtown Kyle his kind of like legacy project, it
cool.
feels like. But when I talked with him about it, like he went all around Texas to
Yeah,
different cities to ask them and sat down with their mayors. And he said that the city they really wanted to model off of was Cedar Park. So like they met with Cedar Park leadership and yeah, like that was one of the big ones that they learned about. So yeah, like it is, you know, that's one of the nice things about going second and
yeah,
third and
yeah,
fourth and
totally.
fifth is you can see the mistakes other people made and but yeah, it's a disadvantage for Austin in my opinion, but
Yeah.
it is advantage for some of these smaller cities.
Totally. Well, I want to focus on Bastrop
Hmm.
for a little bit. Tell me what was your first story that you covered out here, if you remember. Like what first
Man,
brought it to your attention?
okay. So I started in 2021, May 2021. Like I just hit my 4 year mark a couple weeks ago. And the first stories that I remember writing were about, I want to say it was a couple projects going to the industrial park.
Yeah.
Um, one of those I think both of those projects are now dead.
Yeah, that
Oh,
happens in
no,
the
one of them,
industrial park.
okay, no, sorry. One of them
LNS
was
Electric actually opened.
it was
That's what
even before LS Electric. There
yeah.
was like this food tortilla chip
Yeah,
maker.
yeah,
So
tortilla. I think that's dead in
that
the
one I
water.
think is dead.
And Mocha
And
Ventures,
then
which was like a
and
cult
Mocha
cult.
Ventures, and
I
yeah,
think
that
it's
one,
dead.
Mocha Ventures, they say it's not dead, but I know that the city got the land back, so
Yeah,
um, it's gonna be hard to bring that back to life. But yeah,
yeah,
and then the other one was the company that just opened, TA Adhesives, the Canadian company.
yeah. They're in the
Yeah,
park
like
there.
those were like the first stories I wrote. Very quickly after was when uh Boring Co. and SpaceX officially bought the land.
Yeah,
So that happened, I want to say that was in July. So it happened like, pretty soon after I started here. Oh, the film studio,
yeah,
the film studio, actually, that was the first story I wrote about Bastrop.
yeah.
The Bastrop
I remember
552.
reading that.
Yeah, yeah,
So
that was the
I'm just
I wrote.
we're gonna dive right into that because that's one of the big questions I have.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I can tell you the reason I remember that was the first one because,
yeah.
it took me a few weeks after being hired to move out here, and I wrote that story from California before I
Oh,
moved here.
really?
That one was the first one I wrote about, and I remember the community being pretty upset about it, like
Yeah, they seem to have
coordinating
gotten,
against it.
that was like right when I was moving here and starting to get
Yeah,
involved. And like I heard all the hubbub. I didn't really kind of catch what was going on.
yeah.
Everyone seems to have gotten over that. But like, okay, hot
Yeah,
take.
they got over it really quick. Yeah.
Is it gonna happen?
I still say yes. I
Okay.
mean, like, I think I know that, like construction hasn't moved as fast as people want it to, but
Yeah,
every time you talk to Alton, like he swears they have investor money. There's no way for
yeah,
me to fact check that,
sure.
like it's not a public record. I
Yeah,
can only go on the word that I have, but I don't know. I mean, I think there's so much momentum in film right now.
yeah.
But like, I don't know if you're paying attention to what's happening at the legislature, but they just
I saw it was
upped
like
our
what, one and a
incentive.
half billion or something for
So
film.
yeah, it was knocked down from 2.5 billion, but
Okay.
it's down to 1.5 billion over the next 10 years for film incentives.
Yeah.
A lot of people in Hollywood have moved here.
Yep.
If you're watching the news, like you see the Dennis Quaid's and the Matthew
Hmm.
McConaughey's and the Woody Harrelsons and the Owen Wilsons who are testifying at
Yeah.
these hearings. Um, so yeah, there's just a lot of momentum in that regard, and there's not a lot of studio space that's
Yeah.
you talk to people here and they say that they're booked up. So, like there's a need for more of it. The project in San Marcos, that's a film studio, that one is
Yeah.
majorly rolling along.
That's great.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. I think if this is just a guess, like, all that development agreement, everything's in place that like, if that doesn't happen, maybe someone else will, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I think in terms of film and stuff, like historically, Austin is still the film hub of Texas. Like, Fort Worth and Dallas are making a run and,
Mhm.
because of Taylor Sheridan and what he's doing up there. But historically, like, Central Texas, your neck of the woods, like Hope Floats was shot in
Yeah, I know.
Smithville. Yeah, like
Yeah,
that
you go
love
to
and
Smithville, that is
of
like their pride and joy.
yeah, like Love and Death of HBO was shot in
Yeah.
Bastrop,
Yeah.
parts of it, and Lockhart. Like I just went and saw Waiting for Guffman last week, and that was
Mhm.
shot in Lockhart. So,
Oh, okay. I'm gonna have to
there's
check
just
this out.
yeah, like there's so many movies, and movie
Yeah.
history was really headquartered here. So I think it's, probably gonna end up pretty good
Yeah.
here.
Did
So
you
yeah,
did
I
you
don't
hear
know. I
about
mean, like,
sorry, you go on.
oh, I was gonna say, like, I know there's stirring in Bastrop right now on whether that's gonna
Yeah.
happen or not, and I'm not ready to call it dead yet
Okay.
at all.
I
Yeah,
feel optimistic about it too. I
yeah,
flew my drone over as I like to do, and not much going
yeah,
on
yeah.
there.
They've moved
But
some dirt. Like, I don't want to
yeah,
say, yeah, they've done nothing. Like, they have
yeah.
moved dirt. they've, paved and they've flattened and they've done other stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they are doing stuff on the golf course. He bought the Bastrop
Yes.
Country
Yeah.
Club in
Yeah.
Tahitian, and that's awesome. That's very
Yeah.
encouraging to see. I think that would, I mean, that
Yeah. And that,
what
I
that would
mean,
do for
again,
Tahitian development
as
is great.
someone who doesn't live there, like that
Yeah,
was pretty much in disrepair too, right?
yeah, yeah. It needed
Yeah.
a lot
So
of work.
no, like that's I've heard some excitement on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just to me, I'm like I see someone like him or Stephen Carpenter, which we'll talk about in a
Yeah.
second. But and then like I'll compare it to Elon, which we'll talk
Yeah.
about too. And like you see how quickly Elon just built like he's like we're gonna
Yeah.
build a million square foot factory in 6 months and boom,
Yeah.
it just happened.
Yeah.
And you got now you have 2,000 jobs or whatever, and it's truly making an impact where the tradition average developer seems to take many, many years and have a lot of promises, um, of timelines that they don't always meet.
Yeah.
Did you see the news about Zachary Levi's movie studio?
So I had heard about this, but please
Yeah,
tell me more. Like he did
yeah, I
say in
saw
a
it.
podcast that he
Yeah, he's
he
on
was
Glenn
thinking
Beck's
so.
podcast. I saw, and then the San Antonio, not Journal. What my San
Yeah,
Antonio.
Maya saying. Yeah.
That's the only ones I've seen. He's got some property. I think he's calling it like
Yeah.
Wildwood. He's got some property
He,
on
and here's the
1209.
thing, he
Yeah.
actually already had the studio.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, he's had this for a while.
Is it out
Interesting. So
on
no, I missed this.
1209?
Now you no, so he's not there is rumors there's rumors that the what is it, Spiderwood Studios is about to
Yeah.
get sold.
I had
Um
heard stuff like that.
yeah, it was
Okay.
supposed to be, I have heard it very closely that it was supposed to be done in October and I keep
Okay.
circling back on it, but
So is
um
is he the likely buyer?
I don't
Okay.
know. Because he owns I actually looked into this like back in January. He
Yeah.
owns land that is different from this. And like if you look at the location for Wildwood, it's
Yeah.
different. So I don't think it's him. It's possible. Um,
And he wants to
yeah.
build like a master plan community out there.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
okay.
and that's what the people of Spiderwood wanted to do too. And
Oh, interesting.
yeah, that fell through. They defaulted. It's actually back into the ownership of Tommy Warren, who's owned it for decades. So
Okay.
he re-owns it again.
Where's
Um,
where's the Wildwood Studios at? The
God,
land.
if you give me time, I can find it
Okay.
because it actually does pop up. And
Okay.
again, it's a different location. Um,
Interesting. Wow, that's on there.
yeah,
Okay.
again, I
Because I
went
see where
through.
he's got his own personal he's got like 30 acres or something
Yeah,
right on 1209. It's really nice with some river frontage
yeah.
over there.
Now I went down a wormhole because my
Oh,
boss's
fun.
husband like
Yeah.
was listening to a podcast with Zachary Levi and was like, "Do you know anything about this?"
Yeah.
So it was a different location. This was in January.
Yeah.
And yeah, I went through like property records and everything. Um,
That's fun.
but things could have
I can
changed in
spend
the
the whole
last
day
few months. Yeah.
just looking through CAD records and like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got 75 acres right on 1209.
Yeah.
What's the address here?
No, it was like from what I
Mississippi.
remember, it was closer to from what I remember, it was closer to um the farm, Barton Farms that went out of business.
Okay, so that would be on the other side of the river, right?
Yeah, because yeah,
Yeah, they're the one that sold off the land to
Tito. Yeah.
no, the farm sold to a rock mining or sand mining company.
Oh, yes, yeah, the
Yeah.
rock crushing.
Tito
Yeah.
bought XS Ranch, right?
Yeah, he brought
Okay.
excess ranch. Yeah.
And that was a great article. Super exciting when you did that. Have you heard any updates or do you have
Nope,
any
no
idea what he?
updates. It's actually interesting, Tito has bought up a lot more land. Like his entity bought part of the Lockhart mega site. I found that a couple weeks
Hmm.
ago.
Okay.
Um,
What's the mega site? What's it? What are they doing out
that's where Micron was looking and where that data center is going,
there?
the
Okay.
track
Yeah, yeah.
data center. So he bought up like I didn't total it exactly, but it's hundreds and hundreds of acres.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I forget if you had talked about it or heard from others. Like there was talk he was just buying it as like to preserve natural land. I
Yeah,
don't know
I
if
mean
that's
that's
as
the
far as
rumor.
okay.
That's the rumor. Like, and again, until anything moves forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Um, let's see. Okay, Stephen Carpenter out on Greenport. What are your thoughts there?
So I will say, I don't think this is you know, um, breaking news here, but Steven is no longer part of the project, it
Oh,
appears.
really? Okay.
So if you go to his LinkedIn, this was the talk that people said, and if you go to his LinkedIn, right after our story published, he's no longer listed as being part of Emerald Island.
Interesting.
And I have not been able to, figure out the exact, you know, things of what happened there,
Yeah.
but he is no longer per his LinkedIn, which is,
Okay.
he manages and everything. Yeah, like he left. I'm pulling this up so I don't say anything too
Is
incorrect,
it Stephen
but
Carpenter? Is it Jim Carpenter? Is there two?
Jim is his dad. Yeah.
Jim's his dad. Okay.
Steven's the son. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, you know, um, as of May 2024, he's no
Yeah.
longer with Greenport International Airport, Emerald
Interesting.
Island, Carpenter and Associates.
Now they do have like some structures they've put up out
Yeah.
there, right? Are they doing like
Yeah.
crypto mining? What's
So they are doing, God, I can't remember if it was crypto mining, but it's data center. I want to say it was uh, Bitcoin mining.
okay.
So they built some buildings there, and that was supposed to be like the first part of it. I will
Yeah.
say, unfortunately, Jim is a lot less media, talkative than
Yeah.
Stephen was. So it's very going to be very hard to get any more information about that project,
Interesting.
unless there's public filings or anything
Sorry,
like that.
Jim the father or
Yeah.
Jim? Okay.
Yep.
So he's still involved, but it looks like
Yeah. I mean, he's
okay.
the owner and everything, but
Gotcha.
yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm looking at Steven. He's got Austin Emerald FC, says he wants to start
Yeah.
a
So that's the indoor
uh,
soccer team that he's involved with.
is
But
it live? Is it
yeah,
something?
yeah, no, they play. It's
Oh,
an indoor
cool.
soccer team. They're a professional indoor soccer team that
Yeah.
plays. I forget where their arena is. I want to say it was at Coda.
Oh, very cool.
Um, yeah, that's
Yeah, the Coda development is exciting. Like the theme park that they seem to be moving forward on, right? That they were going to do
yeah,
out
yeah, no, it's moving forward. Yeah, we had a story, yeah, a couple weeks ago. It definitely is moving forward.
there. Okay, we can't talk about Bastrop or Austin development without mentioning the elephant in the room, Elon Musk. And
Mhm.
it's fun whenever if ever I want to get like a lot of views or a lot of clicks on something, I do something about Elon and Bastrop and everyone wants to know what's going on. Um so it's been an interesting few years. I just want to let's open mic. Tell me your thoughts about everything Elon and Bastrop in particular.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know what else I can say besides what's being reported. Like
Okay.
it's hard for me, um, like because of Elon Musk and the attention on Elon Musk. It's
Yeah.
very like, I get a news alert every day for Bastrop and Elon Musk, and
Yeah.
it's funny because I feel like every single outlet in the world, like, even as far as India and you know like they're coming out to Bastrop and they're writing the same exact
Yeah.
story. Like,
Yeah.
here's how
And
Elon Musk is changing this
I've been
world.
interviewed for most of
Yeah.
them too. It's a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
So it's like here's how Elon Musk is
Yeah.
changing this rural town.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been without controversy. Chap who lives right next door has
Sure.
also become very prominent because of
He's going to be one of my first
awesome. Yeah,
people
and
too. We're
Chap,
going to have a nice
great,
conversation.
like he
Good friend of mine.
yeah, yeah, he's a great person who, like knows what he's uh knows the accountability and has learned so much throughout all
Yeah.
this process. That being said, like from a company standpoint, whenever I talk about Elon Musk, I always say that you can make the argument that Starlink has been his most successful, or SpaceX
Yeah.
has been his most successful company. Like what they're building with Starlink, everything like that. You can't really yet say the same about Boring Co.
No,
Like
I
a lot
agree.
of their project, like they had a project in Kyle that fell through,
Yeah.
that they were going to build a tunnel there. Like they haven't delivered as much tangible as his other companies have. Um, so like, it's not surprising to see the expansion of SpaceX and the second building that went up and um yeah, so
And they
that's
announced with didn't the state just give them like a big grant? And I think they
yeah.
announced add on additional square footage with that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. It's always really hard. I will caution
Yeah.
my opinion. It's very hard to take those announcements at face value because a lot of them like I'll give you the example. A semiconductor company got a grant and they said this grant is for expanding and they already expanded. Like they already built the building. We
Yeah.
reported it that they had the building and the room and that
Yeah.
the room was not filled yet. Like that was the issue was they didn't have the money to put in equipment and stuff.
Gotcha.
So like, for me, I looked at that announcement and I'm like, I took it as they're they're using it for more equipment in the buildings they built. Like I don't think it's going to be more building. Like they were
Okay.
already building that second 1 million square foot building.
Yeah.
So like
That makes a lot
that's
of
my
sense.
opinion. The problem is it's always hard to fact check because you can't get anyone from SpaceX on the phone.
No,
So
they're very hush hush. And
yeah, so I don't know, but
I have some friends and clients that work there at fairly high
yeah.
levels, and
I've been
I'm always
told that
yeah.
the Elon Musk NDAs are the thickest
I
NDAs
know.
because they make noise when you're going on a
No one
call.
wants to. No one wants.
Yeah.
They're all terrified.
Yeah, so like that, but it seems like SpaceX has been from a business standpoint, like very successful in Bastrop because
Yeah,
from what we've heard, they're building Starlink, equipment there.
yeah,
So, and they posted that on their social media. So like, again, for me, it's, they've said that, but the interesting thing is what's going to happen moving forward
yeah.
because like, they've built that new building next to the bodega. Like they had a filing last week for another parking lot. They've actually bought up more land along that stretch. And it's mostly under the
A recent
SpaceX name.
purchase, like past few months.
In March, yeah,
Yeah.
they bought up some more land.
Is it on the other, like on 969, kind of around the
So
corner?
it's they bought up land south, I guess that's south or west of where SpaceX is now. So along 969.
Yeah.
So they bought up more land there, and then they've actually bought up more land on the Boring Coast side too, behind the school.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's I
Um,
remember seeing that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that was in March.
Yeah.
So they bought up more land too, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that. This
Yeah.
is all just a guess because I can only guess what I see. I think that's actually going to end up more housing.
Okay,
My
do you
guess
think
is
that whole Snailbrook thing is actually going to happen, where they're going
I,
to
from everyone I've
incorporate
talked
or
to, and we have reported it.
yeah,
From everything that we reported and talked to, I think the Wall Street Journal got that story very wrong about
very
him incorporating. Very, very wrong.
yeah, yeah.
Very, very
That's two
wrong.
strikes so far for the
Yeah,
Wall Street Journal. I think.
and if we're being honest, like if you go look at,
Yeah.
you go look at their reporting, they even cribbed like a map from our reporting. So like it was like word it was yeah, so every person that I've talked to said that it is not even remotely accurate.
Yeah,
Uh, that being said, since that story came out, they have incorporated Starbase.
right.
So, like I don't want to also say that it's completely incorrect now because um, like now they have precedent for doing that in Cameron, Texas.
Yeah.
But I think that in order for that to happen, they would actually have to get, things like wastewater, that the
Yeah,
city still
that's the big
on.
holdup, and we're
Yeah.
working. Yeah, they're working with the
Yeah.
city.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And then they actually have to build the homes on the rest of the property.
yeah,
Um, I think from what I've heard, like the reason that they built out the bodega was that executives basically came and said, there's nothing to do around here and we need amenities. You can't get your hair cut, you can't go
yeah,
anywhere to eat. So like, there's still a lot more that they need to be a city rather than
yeah.
just a little bodega with sandwiches and that's very good.
They are.
Um,
They're some of my
yeah.
favorite sandwiches. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think there's still a lot.
Anytime you're in Bastrop, by the way, just hit me up. We'll grab
Sounds
lunch.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no. So but there's still like a lot that needs to be done, I
yeah.
think, before that would happen. Yeah.
How about X / Twitter? Any rumblings or rumors you hear about? what it might expand to. You're saying they filed a permit to build another building over there
Um,
or another
I
parking?
checked that. I had heard that.
Okay. I had
But
heard
I
that too.
checked and
Yeah.
I've heard that, I think you've heard probably the same thing.
Yeah.
But I have asked for permits and I was told those permits do not exist. So,
Okay.
like I put in a request for them and I was told that's not accurate. But
Gotcha.
I'm hearing the same thing that you're hearing and I have not been able to prove it yet.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I still it's again,
Yeah.
what a X headquarters would look like
Yeah.
is a lot different than what a Boring Co. and a SpaceX headquarters would look like.
Yeah.
Because I think when you're getting into tech people, like, if they're going to be tech type people, moving out to Bastrop would be a harder sell for that,
It is.
rather
Yeah.
than manufacturing. My gut,
I
we were
can tell you
looking,
I haven't had any clients, but I've spoken with many other agents and with like the new home builders here in the colony, and they tell
yeah,
me like the ex-employees like they have them coming out here, but they can't qualify for a home. Um,
yeah,
they're not it's like people making 40 to 60
yeah,
um
yeah, because that's a
for doing
support
some
center. Like
yeah
it's
sports.
not a, tech level job. Like it's not a engineering or anything like that type of job. So we know, we reported it. It was,
Yeah,
reported in the ABJ, but they were looking for office space out in East Austin.
right.
Uh, yeah, and they also do have office space in West Austin. Like they do have an office that's out there. So like
Okay.
again, I don't know, you know, as of now, it to me it's almost like a paperwork headquarters, but
Yeah,
I don't know what it's going to be. They could sign a big lease, in downtown Austin and it wouldn't surprise me. They could
yeah,
build another building out, on his campus and it wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, I felt a lot more pessimistic about, X actually being there
yeah.
a year ago, but I feel a little more optimistic now.
Yeah. No, I'm it's interesting. I don't know where that one's gonna go.
Yeah,
I see SpaceX has really been the big I think the big weight that's shifted so much in terms of the economy out here. It's brought
yeah,
so many jobs, so many higher paying jobs, homeowners, things like that. And
yeah,
Tesla, I always forget about Tesla, but like Tesla's really what in my mind what opened up Bastrop, you know
yeah, for
during
sure.
COVID to the boom. Um, cool. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. It's as good as I could have hoped for. It's always great to have a conversation, and I really appreciate you giving your valuable time to share with the community and share with myself. Anything exciting in the works that you want to you can tease
No, I
at?
mean,
Any? Yeah.
that's a good question.
Yeah.
Um, no, honestly,
Yeah.
nothing right now. I will say from a development standpoint, unsurprisingly, the summer months tend to be a little slower.
Sure.
But we'll see. I mean, I got nothing, everything about Bastrop has been reported, a lot of like the Sendero and,
Yeah.
Ironwood and other stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm the same. I get my Google alerts. I'm every day. I'm like,
Yeah.
what's new about Bastrop? What's going on? Okay, well, what's the best way people can follow you?
Yeah, I always say, I'm pretty active on social media, but it seems for, this type of work, LinkedIn has probably been the biggest driver.
Nice.
But yeah, LinkedIn or X or Facebook, like if you search my name, you'll find me.
Awesome. And I'm going to tell everyone this because whenever I post an article from ABJ, everyone's always like complaining. They're like, there's a paywall. I'm like,
Yeah,
Austin Business Journal, if you're going to spend your money on one thing, it is 100% worth whatever it is, 50, 100, 150, whatever a year. As a realtor, you get like discounted or I think even free through ABOR. Subscribe to it. It is an amazing publication. Read all the stuff here if you're really looking to stay on top of what's happening in the Austin metro
yeah.
area. Yeah.
And we appreciate that. And what I always tell people is at the end of the day, I need to pay for my rent.
Yeah.
So, I know it's frustrating. I know, yeah, like
Well,
personally, it's hard
yeah,
to subscribe to every single thing, but
yeah,
yeah, I can tell you like the feedback we get from people who read our papers that it's well worth the money. So I hope that stays true.
yeah. No, journalism. quality journalism is so valuable, and y'all at ABJ and you in particular just do a fantastic job. So thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. And thank you so much for having me on.
Of course.